Hello.
Love the intro music. I was going to nod off there. It was so relaxing.
You know, maybe we should start this afternoon session with a little yoga meditation.
Yeah, or jumping jacks.
Yeah.
Well, you felt relaxed. I felt kind of fired up, like the electronic beats on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah,
Let me hit another gear.
love it.
Well, welcome everyone, wherever you're streaming from, YouTube or LinkedIn. Hello everyone. Today, I am Emma Lowe. I am the host of Spotlight and CS in Focus. I'm here joined today with two of my incredible friends, Bob and Greg, that we're going to be discussing something that's really close to my heart, is what it really means about taking ownership of your work or your life, and how do we drive from autopilot to more alignment. Yeah. So Greg, Bob, do you want to introduce yourself quickly to the audience here?
Sure, I'll go first. I'm so excited about this. Nobody ever asked me about this topic. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. And Greg and I have tossed it around as well. So it's amazing to expand the audience. Thanks for inviting me, Emma. I'm a customer success coach and speaker. I speak to audiences and teams trying to explore their creativity and curiosity and hit their targets and be the rock stars they are. So that takes shape in many, many forms. But anyway, some of those things we'll talk about today.
Yeah, Bob, we have talked about this a lot. This feels on point. So, but for sake of introduction, hello everybody. My name's Greg. I co-founded a company called Vienna Waits with my partner, and Vienna Waits is all about this topic. Actually, it's all about helping people get off autopilot and step into a more intentional way of living. Which for us, intentional living is all about being deliberate in decisions that you make and then taking action on those decisions. And so I think we'll really dig into that and talk about it today. But how we got connected, Emma, is prior to Vienna Waits, I've spent about 12 years in different customer success and go-to-market roles in the software space primarily. And so that's also how Bob and I connected. So the background of customer success, working with customers, working to play that long game, I think really helped set me up for what Vienna Waits turned into and how it's emerged in the world. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, as we get into the conversation.
Well, thank you. If you're tuning in from anywhere, feel free to put in the chat and comment here. And we're streaming from LinkedIn and YouTube. Now, tell me where you are and why this topic interests you as well. Right. So my first question, I think you kind of explained. Okay, something I want to start. Actually, last week I set up a poll just asking the simple question like how I asked the audience, how do you measure your impact at work? Because most of the time in customer success, we're always moving really fast. And how do you know you're driving impact? So from this poll, most of the people saying customer outcome is their number one. They know that they're driving impact, and maybe that's how they feel satisfied from their work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other options were internal recognition, promotion raise, and there's the last one is honestly I'm not sure. And there's people actually clicking that off. What do you think?
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit about this. I'm glad you brought that up, Emma, because I think at first, when in the context of what the conversation's about today, which is how to get off autopilot, how to align work that's truly meaningful to you, or find work or align your work to something that's truly meaningful to you. When I heard the question that you had posed in that LinkedIn poll at first, I thought it was, how do I know, or how can I be so sure that I'm doing work that's meaningful to me? And when you said that 74% of people said that it was driving customer outcomes, I was kind of thinking I think there's a lot of people calling bullshit on that. Or I would call bullshit on that answer. Like, do people really feel meaning and alignment and that work is aligned to their purpose when customers get outcomes? I mean, I would love to think that be true. And I had posed that to you, Bob, in some of the consulting that you do. I wondered if, hey, when you're consulting with a team, do you have the sense that leaders or even team members in the customer success space, do do they personally get meaning from the outcomes their customers achieve? Like, I don't know if you have a perspective on that, but that's how I interpreted the question, which I don't think was, but would love to take in that direction, Emma. I'm curious, Bob, if that's something that you've seen. Do people really care about the outcomes their customers get?
Well, I guess I sort of approach it from myself, when I was a CSM or I was working with customers, you like me, Greg, and you, Emma, too, I've been working with customers my whole life. I care about people, and I think people care about people. I think for those people in CS or in technology that work directly with people and get to know them, they do care. Not necessarily maybe about the business outcomes that they're measuring to get renewals, but they care about the person on the other side of the table. And, that connection, I think, is what a lot of us are seeking out, whether it's people we work with or customers that we work with every day. So, yeah, I would call bullshit on that maybe a little bit too. I mean, I think that's what people care about because that's what they're told they're supposed to care about. But I think what we really care about is, belonging and connection, which is really oftentimes the difference between being miserable at work and feeling some sort of sense of purpose, if you can call it that.
Yeah, I think to that point, I actually like that distinction. I think that, I mean, the network that you reach out to, Emma, people who are in customer success or in the software space, but let's just call it anybody here who's listening in who works with customers. Let's just make the assumption that if you work with customers, you care about people, you enjoy working with people. And I like that distinction, Bob, of saying, do I really care about my customers getting outcomes? As in, my customer sales increased by 14%, and that makes me feel good, or like my work is aligned to purpose. Probably not, but the idea that a person who I am working with as a customer or who I sold to, they got a promotion, or they're kind of driving a mission forward. I think that there's something to that. And I left a company called Exonify, which is really where I grew up in my leadership and customer success career. And there's a company that we worked with, big grocery retailer in the Southwestern United States. And they had an executive sponsor. Her name is Liz Thompson. And Liz was just a champion for our product. And we had all these conversations. And over the years, we built this relationship. And really in my heart, I just wanted to make Liz successful. So much so that Liz and I talked on the phone last week and just about life and what she's up to now. And sure enough, she had published a Harvard Business Review case study about the cultural transformation she drove at this grocery retailer. And a big part of that was using Exonify as a product. Not to plug Exonify so much, but just how cool is that? And it made me feel like I had done something meaningful. So I think it is a useful distinction. I think, so for anyone who put it into your poll, Emma, that I get meaning from my work by delivering customer outcomes, we call bullshit on you, unless it has something to do with the person on the other end. I think that might be a trick to it, maybe a key takeaway.
That's really true. Like how I like how you said that we really feel valued and when we've been seen and when we feel connected, right? That's how I feel with you guys. I feel like every time I talk to you, I always learn something new and feel connected. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I wonder, because we talk about autopilot a lot. When was that moment you felt like you're stepping out of autopilot from your career? Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's happened a few different times in my career. When I think of autopilot, I think of what, I graduated from university. I had a connection. I got a job in accounting at a auto parts manufacturer. I got hired away from there, got promoted, got a raise. And that pattern had repeated pretty much my entire career, like the first 20 years of my career. I never really thought much about purpose, never thought much about whether I loved my job. As long as I was getting a raise every 2 to 3 years and getting a promotion, I was good. And that's all the kind of validation I needed. The first time I guess I got knocked off autopilot was when I got laid off for the first time. And it was the first time in my career was like, wait a minute, I'm the man. Like I've been told nothing for 20 years except that I'm doing a great job and I'm getting promoted and I'm getting raises every year or 2 years. Like that was the first time I got knocked off kind of center. And it's happened a few different times over my career, most recently with a really serious health scare with my son about a year ago. But in my experience, that kind of explains how a lot of people's careers and even lives kind of unfold. And it usually takes some sort of tragedy or diagnosis, the loss of a loved one, to knock you off center and be like, oh, right, maybe there is more to life. Maybe I'm supposed to do more with the time I have here. And I know Greg has got definitely a few things that have happened to him too. And the work that I think about a lot is it possible to be proactive about this? Do I have to wait for something terrible to happen to make me realize how short life is? Is there a way to be intentional about this, be proactive about this, and take control of my life? Or if I'm just going to let my life snap back into its original shape and wait for the next tragedy to occur?
Bob, I think that's so well said, because the way I was thinking about how to answer that question started from a place of, I believe that this notion of autopilot, which is language we use and language I've heard you use, Bob, is insidious. I don't think you necessarily know that you're on autopilot until that thing happens, right? Until something bumps you. I think we get used to this numbness of just going through the motions of life, making excuses to ourselves, the person we lie to the most, about why I can't do things or shouldn't do things because of the responsibilities that I have, or maybe I'm not smart enough for that, or whatever. But there's still this feeling, I think, that we do grow numb to, that is a deep sense that there's something else I should be doing. I think we probably all know. So to anyone listening, you probably know somebody who just seems to be doing something that they were meant to do. And you can probably name them in your mind or picture them in your mind. And they're probably a musician, or they work for some nonprofit, or they're an entrepreneur. And maybe it might be somebody who you work with, or maybe that might be you, which that might be cool if it's you, but it certainly wasn't me for a long time. And I remember looking at people and feeling this tinge of resentment, but I grew so used to that feeling. So I think, first of all, I think being on autopilot can be insidious. You don't notice it for the longest time, and you can just kind of grow used to that feeling of making excuses and lying to yourself about whether you are or not there. And like you, Bob, I think for me, I was on autopilot professionally, but that feeds into, I think, every aspect of your life for such a long time. And I think that what it took for me was that dramatic event, that truly deep, dramatic thing that happened to kick me off of the path and trajectory I was on, because everything was pretty good. Things were pretty good. I mean, I was going for the raise, and I had the perfect resume and CV and LinkedIn profile, but I was definitely not living my potential, for sure. Happy to get into that, and we probably will dig into it. But I think because of the experience that I had and where my life went, which is similar to what you alluded to there, Bob, just your son, and needing to kind of hit the brakes on everything in order to deal with that crisis. I think it puts everything into focus and makes you realize that we don't have this idea of getting to 60, then retiring, then doing the things. We have a choice, and we can be intentional, present, engaged in our professional decisions. We just, when we're passive about it, we're actually defaulting to choosing just to be on autopilot. It's a bit of a ramble there. I hope that strung together, but I think that I didn't directly answer the question, Emma, but we'll kind of take us into a deep spot, and we can go there if you want to. But just wanted to allude to that I think it's insidious.
I am curious, Greg. Do you think? I'm sure you've thought about this. If that thing hadn't happened to knock you out of off center, where would you be right now? You'd be in CRO school, you'd be chasing, working for a big VC backed company trying to exit for $10 million. I mean, yeah, is that a worthwhile thought exercise to go through, or is it just too theoretical?
No, I think so. Whitney, my partner, and we have explored that from time to time, what life might have looked like. And yeah, it's a bit too hypothetical to really go deep on it, but I think it's a useful exercise. So what happened for me is in 2020, I had become the vice president of customer success at Exonify, and we built this team. The company's doing really well. And before the pandemic hit, my wife at the time, her name is Allison, was diagnosed with brain cancer. We had 3 young kids, all below the age of 5. And she had a very short journey and ended up succumbing to the disease in June of 2020. And so it was a fast, dramatic, and traumatic experience for all of us, because as part of that, COVID hit and we had to go into lockdown, and Exonify had a heavy customer, or a customer base that was heavily retail oriented. So that meant I also had to lean in professionally, but also put together the pieces of what is family going to look like and what is life going to look like without Allison and without this person who I'd been a partner with for 15 years and the kid's mom. And so I think life just from that point, it was just about surviving. And I think everything became clear to me about those decisions I hadn't been making, all the fears that I had about maybe going out and doing my own thing, or trying to even discover what was truly important to me, came into this perspective of like, what is there to be afraid of? Like, that's something to be afraid of. In this case, I got to survive. Allison didn't. What I should, I owe it to myself and to my kids to really be intentional and thoughtful about what is my life going to be about for the next year or two, if I even get that, let alone 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And so I think from that experience, shifting in and then Whitney and I developing a relationship and building a family together after all of that and through all of that, I think we go through that thought exercise of we've started Vienna Waits, we've established a new set of routines, we bought a new home, we've changed everything about our lives, and we do think, well, what might Greg in that parallel universe be doing right now? And for the record, I did CRO school, even post that.
I know you did. I know.
And I recommend it for anyone. But I think Greg in that track, absolutely was pursuing white picket fence, was pursuing external measures of what success looked like. And I think that Greg would still be wrestling with the tension of what should I be doing, but I'd be fighting against the fact that there's fear and it's scary to think about changing the path that you're on. But then once you break free of that, you realize just how powerful you are. And I'd like to think that Greg would have figured that out, would have become as brave as this Greg is. Not to say I've got it all figured out now by any means, but I think this new version of me, I like a lot better.
I have a little story from the audience I'm going to pull up on the screen. This is from Lee. I felt the same. Like showing up for all areas of your life is the goal. Funny how the older you get, the clarity that comes. I was asked by someone the other day, how do I rank my importance, identity? Work was number 5. It's where I am today. I felt really But you just say like older it gets, we don't wait until we're 50 to finally figure out it's not what really make me happy and how you feel aligned. Yeah.
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 Bob, did you ever have the experience, like, just of in your career as you were going through? I mean, did you have everything you wanted? If you think back to that, and then this, I mean, it's a privileged conversation to sit here and go, "Oh, I like to get off autopilot." I mean, you got bills to pay, and I mean, people to feed, and all of those things. So I think it's a privileged conversation to even be able to reflect on that. So want to note that. But from that perspective of growing your career, did you ever have those feelings? So I'm speaking about it as a given, but maybe that's just my experience. I'm curious if you ever had that sense that maybe there's something more that I could be doing here, because it sounds like you were on a good ride.
I think it kind of tickled the back of my brain for most of my career. I don't think it was really something that I spent a lot of time on. You're right that it is a very privileged conversation because, again, we talk about autopilot, and it's not just it doesn't happen with work. It happens like, okay, I got to be 30, and then I got married, and then we bought a house, and I had a big mortgage. And it's not as simple as saying, well, your purpose is you love animals, so quit your job and go volunteer at the Humane Society for a living. Like, it's that this life and this autopilot has a way of sort of kind of, I don't know what you use the word trapping, but it's not as simple as waking up one day and deciding to do something else and going chasing it. But the thing that I've found, and I've talked to a number of people on my podcast about this, and what you described, I think, Greg, is what some people call purpose anxiety, right? This idea that some people seem to know their purpose. I don't have my purpose. I'm running out of time to find it, and I'm wasting my life. And I've certainly had kind of that, but it usually is after one of the, getting laid off. I've been laid off once. I've been fired once. I've lost people in my life, etc. But I love the idea that most people, and I do think you're right, there are people that seem to have found their purpose, but the happiest people that I've talked to are often the people that are perpetually in a state of pursuing their purpose that they know they will never find. Like, there is no goal. There is no place that you finally get to. It's the exploration of something further from where you are today. And you may never find it, but as long as you're asking the questions, being curious, staying creative, and moving forward, maybe that is the goal. It's trite, but it's the journey, not the destination. Because I think that describes most people. And I think, at least for me, that helps with this purpose anxiety, because maybe I'm never supposed to find it. And maybe it's elusive and it's changing. And even if I found it, it would change. So as long as I find some fulfillment in the pursuit of it, then that's all I need.
I think there's something really profound about that. And I think that what you're saying aligns a little bit to what Lee had offered in the comment there of where things rank at different stages of life and how things show up. Because in a way, so much of what purpose means to me right now, I'm heavily in a zone building Vienna Waits, running programming, developing our business, where work is really strongly purpose aligned for me. When everything was happening with Allison and I needed to get my family back on the rails, purpose was really about those 3 kids. Going back before that, swing back to career, and I think there's probably these different lanes, and you're training for an event. My purpose is really aligned to being physically the best that I can be. So it's probably a thing that that changes over time. And I think there's definitely something to that. But I'm finding for myself, this sense that I think that I've actually, it feels lately that I've landed on something like kind of what you're saying, but in a way different, that for the first time in my life, I've actually discovered a path that I want to go on, and I know there is never going to be an end. If our mission is to help people be intentional about how they live and to get off autopilot, like that'll never be done. That's a big purpose, but I feel committed to that for the rest of my life. That feels pretty cool. And it's the first time I've ever had that. And I've never had that sense, like I want to be the best customer success manager ever. That never entered it. It was always something a little bit more meta, something a little bit broader than that. And I think that somebody who we had in our group, in one of the groups for this Unblock Yourself program, he discovered the sense that his purpose is to inspire people to run, swim, and bike. And it's like, that is my purpose. But that doesn't mean that I need to quit my job and try to become a pro athlete, and that is my way to inspire people. It's kind of like, actually, no, that is this guiding thing that sits up here that I'm always going to keep on the horizon, and I'm going to go get a job in product management because I see that, if I learn how to build great products, then one day I might be able to align that, my work kind of falls in line with that vision. So there's some sort of guiding light there. So I think that notion of purpose anxiety, like I don't have it, and now I feel like totally rudderless. That's probably some work worth doing. But it doesn't mean that I love animals, therefore I'm going to quit my job and become a veterinarian. But it might mean that, hey, like I get the connection to what it is, and I'm okay with that because it's a long game that I'm playing.
Yeah, and I do talk to, I think for a lot of people, and for me, for the longest time, I really never had that guiding light that you talked about, Greg. And I don't know, when it was that you discovered that, but for me, this idea of staying curious and being vulnerable has made me more aware of things as they present themselves. So I'll just give you one example. And you probably get tired of me quoting Rick
No,
Rubin.
I will go grab the book right now. I'll never get tired of you or anyone quoting Rick Rubin. I invite people to put it in chat too. If you have a Rick Rubin quote, we're here for it all day long.
Yes, throw them in there. One of the ones that I recite daily is follow the emotional charge, right? You've got a choice between two things, follow the one that just feels right, which sounds really simplistic, but it's amazing how rarely we do it. And so I wouldn't say that I know my purpose yet, but I can tell you that because I've gotten much better at staying curious and being creative, I have a podcast. If there's some customers, yeah, thank you. Get it everywhere you get your podcast. I had Christy Felteruso, who is a big deal in customer success circles. If you don't follow her, you probably do because she's got like 50,000 followers. But if you don't follow her, anyway, we had a great conversation. It's not out yet, but it was just one of the most genuine, vulnerable, honest conversations we had. We both laughed, we cried, and I hung up the phone and I like broke down. I get emotional thinking about it. And I'm just like, what is this feeling? Like this feeling of connection and vulnerability. And I'm just like Rick Rubin says, follow the charge. Yeah. Like, what is that? Like, whatever this is, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I could tell you, I don't think I would have been capable of having a conversation like that, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But even if I did, I probably would have just hung up the phone, jumped on my next call, wouldn't have thought much about it. And so, just slowing down, intentional, and noticing those moments of awe. It's like, okay, the universe is screaming at me and trying to tell me something right now.
I think I can't wait for that episode, by the way, and how impacted you are by that is something that I can't wait to hear you kind of exploring that conversation with her. But I think that stems from you landing on this spot that curiosity and vulnerability for you are like that is like, to be curious and to chase that is deeply aligned to your purpose. And that can show up. That can show up for you as a consultant with a CS team. It can show up for you as a podcast host. I mean, you can use that thread. And like you, I think that there's things that I couldn't tap into until I figured out that this was actually what I was meant to do. So I'm going to sit with this conversation a little bit longer, as opposed to saying, no, this is the most important thing for me right now, because it's really tied to what that purpose is for me. And I think it's actually a great illustration. Like, you can't make a business at face value at curiosity and vulnerability. Like, what are your skills? I'm imagining you in an interview, Bob. Bob, why should we hire you for this executive level role? I'm very curious. I'm deeply vulnerable. Like, bring me on. Like, it just probably wouldn't fly. But having those as your guiding light becomes the superpower for you, right? Like, you can step in and you can lean into those things because it gives you this energy source that allows you to ask good questions, deeply understand, but also admit when you don't know something, that just sort of spins up this beautiful flywheel.
Yeah, and one thing that you were saying saying earlier, Greg, and it just kind of reminded me, I've always loved this idea of, usually when something knocks us off center, it reminds us that we have our loves out of order, right? And, family and work and kids and community and friends, etc. I love that idea, right? But you're right. I guess I've never really thought about it. Like, I'd like to believe that my kids are always at the very top of that list, and my wife and my kids, right? But it doesn't mean those things can't shift around. I absolutely love the work that I do. I feel like it's the most closely aligned to my purpose ever. And it is important for me to show my kids that, I can make an impact on the world, and for them to be, proud of the man I am. So it's not as simple. Like, these things are much more related than I've ever thought. And yes, I probably work more hours than I should, but it's tied to something so much more meaningful than it ever was before, that I do think it's helping closer that purpose. And I do think that's something your kids notice and they do appreciate. It's just those things slide around in order, I guess, a little bit.
So maybe pulling on that thread a little bit of this guiding light of curiosity and vulnerability, I think that ties to something deeper for you, though, that I've had the privilege to come to learn about you, which is that the importance of showing up and being an example for your kids. And I think that then takes it to a whole other level. Like, what job would you wish for your kids to have?
Yeah.
And hey, roof over their head, happy. Like, it's less about the job per se, but how do you get there? And I think it's probably aligned to a lot of the things we're talking about. How are you finding recently that you're showing up and being an example for your sons, for your family? Like, have you felt a change for yourself?
Yes, I think so. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have changed in my life. One of them was getting sober 3 years ago. So I think that change alone was none of this other work that I did would have been possible without the clarity that brought. But it's amazing. Like, I know you're not quite yet where I am. You're just a few years behind me with your family, Greg, but my kids are now in college. My oldest one is graduating, will be entering the workforce. And I'm like, it's an extremely privileged kind of position to have, where I'm like, I want them to find some of the answers that took me 40 years to figure out. Like, I want them to figure all this stuff out on their own. And I think the part of it is that I'm going to have to, well, I know it is, I'm going to have to sit back and watch them figure it out on their own. I can't teach it to them. It's just like, maybe is it is everybody destined to be 50 years old before they figure this out? I don't know. You're not 50 yet, so you're figuring it out earlier
Getting
than
there.
me.
You-
It's amazing. I
you-
do talk to people in their 20s, right? Like we've talked to people in their 20s that are asking themselves questions about purpose and alignment. I'm like, how old are you? 25, man. I was always just trying to stuff as much money into my pocket or spend as much money as I could out at bars and have a fun and just live a completely hedonistic lifestyle. It never once occurred to me whether what I was doing was aligned or whether I was making an impact, or I didn't give a shit about any of that stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah. I actually, and on that thread, I genuinely believe like you had to have bad things happen to you in order to, it seems or appears, in order for you to make that transition off of this autopilot and into something more intentional. And if anyone who's listening to this goes, okay, the tips for me, how to get off autopilot, crisis, find one, lean into it, that's bad advice, right? That's not useful. So I'm wondering, I mean, that's a bit of a mission that we're on, is how can we help people to realize the potential for being engaged and intentional without having to, or without waiting for that thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of something for you? I mean, I could riff on it a little bit, but is there something for you that you would say, okay, here's a way you might want to give, or a way you could give yourself a shake? Do you have a sense for what you might recommend to somebody who's listening that is saying, okay, find your vision? It sounds pretty good. And there's some interesting thoughts in chat too. Is there anything from your side of a tip?
It's such a great question. It's probably better than my answer. When I talked about my son's illness a year ago, that was the latest thing that knocked me off center. And I lost my dad in my early 20s. And we've, most people have lost people in their lives or nearly lost them. And what I always found was that there's this pocket that you live in where your focus becomes solely on, in your case, your kids, Greg, or in my case, my son, and making sure that he recovered. He has, by the way.
Yeah.
But we live in this pocket. We're like, oh man, I'm never going to sweat the small stuff. I'm going to live every day as if it were my last. This is the last time I'm going to have to be woken out of my, comfort zone. And for me, every other time that happened, it was like 3 days. Like I swear, on the fourth night, I was up at 3 a.m. worrying about some LinkedIn post or something that email that I sent, or something I said the night before. I am extremely proud to say that a year after my son's illness, I haven't let my life snap back into its original shape. So it wasn't that I proactively did something to get off autopilot. It's just that I haven't let myself go back to it. And what has been the difference this time? It's been a few different things. I'm telling you, for me, writing. I know some people talk about journaling. I do this thing called morning pages, which is from a book called The Artist's Way by Jennifer Cameron. It's something that my wife is, just like every other awesome thing I've ever done in my life. My wife was trying to get me to do it 10 years ago, and I didn't listen to her until I finally one day I did. And it's get up in the morning and write 3 pages, 8.5 by 11 single line. Takes me like 40 minutes. It wasn't easy to get into. I can't describe the impact that it's made, but the thing that it does, it gets you over that fear of judgment. I mean, for anybody that's watching, I've got guitars hanging on the wall behind me, and I've never been able to write a song, but I've been playing guitar since I was 9, because I write down 2 lines and I'm like, that sucks. That doesn't sound like even the worst song Tom Petty wrote. And I quit. The morning pages is all about, you never go back and read them. You never show them to anybody. It's just it's a way to build the muscle of getting ideas from your brain through your fingers onto the page. And that's it. And it gets you over this fear of judgment that I think is the thing that holds most people back. And I don't know exactly how to describe how that's transformed me or how that's kept me from going back to autopilot, but it's if I skip it for a couple days, I'm just not myself. It's cathartic. It's meditative. For me, it's been the one thing that's made the biggest difference.
That's huge. I think that's a great tip. I think that's incredibly useful. And then listening to your partner, winning, like that's a win.
Yeah.
I think there's people who know us best. We often don't listen to those who know us best. But so that's probably a second good one. So here's where my head went when you were describing that, Bob, is I think that autopilot feels, and reflecting on it, and it's not like, I think you were characterizing it. Autopilot is insidious, but it's also it'll come back for you, right? It'll suck you back in, because autopilot is easy and it might be fun, but it's insidious. So I like this characterization we're giving it that feels a little bit like Stephen Pressfield's Resistance, the sort of idea that it's always going to be looming there and you can always drop back into it. And hey, if anyone's listening to this and is like, well, I'm on autopilot, it's like, fuck off, Greg and Bob. Like, we like, just let me be, right? It's Friday afternoon. It's okay. I think we can be okay with autopilot. That's okay. But if you're thinking, hey, I might want to move past this, I think know that it's insidious. So you might not even realize you're on it, and you can snap back into it at any moment. I think about when you're in that autopilot mode, it's not like you're not doing anything. It's not like you're just sitting along and life's taking you. You're probably working really, really hard, actually. You're probably working your ass off 40, 68 hours a week. You're probably driving your kids around or yourself around to all kinds of activities. I think that is autopilot. And I think we're in this mode culturally of pursue, just go after it. Your morning pages example, I think, is a great one of, I think, how we need to live in order to switch off of autopilot and to stay off of it. And we talk about it in the context of these 3 Ps. So if we're always pursuing, as human beings, we need to pursue. But before that, this idea of pause. So just make space for your thoughts. And those morning pages are a great example of that. And I mean, this is not novel. It's just maybe another way of thinking about it. But pause. So meditate, do the morning pages. I do personally do these morning reflections that I do get teased about sometimes, but I've got over 700 of them now, and there's great data and shit in there. And pause, take a minute, and let your brain kind of let go of all the stuff that's rattling around in there. Exercise is another great way to do that. So pause is the first. Second is prioritize. So we all have an endless list of things to do. I've got notebook upon notebook of tasks that I need to complete, but it's so easy to get lost in, I've got all this shit to do, and you just jump into the thing that feels most urgent or whatever's coming at you. But I think there's an opportunity to do that second thing, which is prioritize. What's most important for me today? From a work perspective, you can kind of map it out. For me, I'm a coach for my son's hockey team. We have a game at 8 a.m. tomorrow. One of the most important things I need to do after I'm done this call, I'm realizing I need to write the parents an email and be like, guys, it's the championship game, 8 a.m. tomorrow. Make sure your kids eat a good dinner and go to bed early. Like that's not a work thing, but that is an important thing that I need to prioritize. But I think when you pause, you open yourself up to what is really important. You kind of create that clarity for yourself. You prioritize second, what do I need to move around and shift around in order to be ready to kind of go after my day in the best way possible, and then pursue. I think we get it backwards all the time, that we just pursue. So how do you stay off autopilot? I think you probably just do what you're doing, Bob, like thoughtfully pause, prioritize, and then get after whatever it is you need to do. And I think that's a meaningful way to stay off autopilot. It's also a great way to get off of it in the first place, as opposed to waiting for that bad thing to happen to you.
And the best way to stay off autopilot is, for God's sakes, during the playoffs, pack your hockey bag the night before.
Yes.
You're going to be hungover and tired tomorrow morning.
At 8 a.m.?
Your 10-year-old kid cannot be trusted to remember their skates, their shoulder pads. You've got to be a part of this process, unless you want to be the parent that's racing back to home after their kid doesn't have hockey socks or a jersey or something 10 minutes before the big game.
I think you're damn right about that, Bob. That's advice I'll be taking. I will pause after this call, prioritize packing the hockey bag, and then go and pursue the act of packing that damn hockey bag. You're right. You're right.
It's worse if it's the coach's kid that forgot the thing. That's then all your credibility is gone.
That's the absolute worst. Emma, we might have gone a little bit off the rails there. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I really like it. Basically, my kid probably forgot their stuff, and it's definitely a good tip back the day before. I want to bring up one of the comments from the audience that I think is a really good tip, is that how to get out of autopilot traction is when you're doing something that matters to you and others. And that's how you drive intentional meetings. I think this is a really good tip. And thank you, John.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
Yeah. I personally want to do after this, we'll probably start a Pinterest board about kind of vision board where what makes me happy, what do I want to do in the future. I always thought about writing, but like you said, if I'm not showing to anybody else, I'm okay with that. But I'm going to try that as well.
Well, and I don't know so Bob and I have talked a little bit about there's maybe guiding purposes for us, Emma, but would you be able to characterize kind of what your purpose or focus is in some way? Because I would have a guess based on how you've shown up in my life, but I would love to hear if you have a sense for what that purpose is for you.
Funny thing, last week, somebody asked me the same questions about why CSM Focus. We are a non-for-profit, but I felt the most joy when I can highlight my best friends here or people who have a thing to say, a thing to share, and to elevate others or to move a conversation forward or bring something meaningful to life. That's kind of my intention here, and I found that bring the most joy to me. It's just
you are so good at that, Emma. I remember the first time that we met, and there was just this. You were just very intentional about. You're kind of the connector, and the community person that I sort of wish I was. I'm not that good at it, and I have to work really hard at it. And it seems so natural to you to just be introducing people, to be bringing people together, to having conversations. And it's always in service of other people and not you. I think you do just an amazing job at that.
Yeah, I would agree. Emma, I think so often when people show up, come to this event or look to meet you, there's some ulterior motive there of a product to sell or trying to appear like you've got something figured out. You've been so curious in all of our conversations and so genuine about moving that conversation forward and elevating what this profession is about. It's a superpower you have. And I think that's why so many people listen to what you have to say. It's a gift.
Well, I'm grateful for everybody who's here to bring their voice and share their insights here as well. And I truly feel that this is a topic that's true to our hearts. That's something that we feel passionate and hope we don't need to wait until, I don't want to say 50 years old, but earlier to start asking that question, to get out of autopilot and do what really things like intentional.
Yeah.
To bring things.
So could I ask a question that, we're in the home stretch of our time here together, but maybe to bring it kind of in focus to what CS in Focus is about and what this conversation is about. I think we've tried to land on a couple of things of what is autopilot, what is a way to, or some ideas on how to get off autopilot. But to both of you, I'm just kind of curious, do you think it's possible to work and have work aligned to your purpose and feel great about the work you do if you're in customer success? If you're a CSM kind of grinding it out with customers, if you're a leader in the CS space, in customer experience, or let's just even say in a customer facing role. So could you say that is it possible, do you think, to have work aligned to purpose in those sorts of roles? Do you have to be running your own company or setting up a nonprofit? I'm just so curious on your thoughts on that. Maybe you first, Bob, and then Emma, curious.
I I will preface my answer by saying that I'm a coach in customer success, and nobody ever reaches out to a coach when everything is going well. So I have a bit of a skewed perspective on, well, I think I do, but I also think it's fairly realistic. I think the customer success space is undergoing a transformation. I think it's changing into something that people did not sign up for. And so I think it's because we are going through that transition, a lot of people are feeling like this is not what this is not what I meant. This is not what I thought this was going to be. But I do think it's possible. I think it's, just like anything, it's just comes down to leadership. I mean, I don't expect people, we care about the customers we work with, and we care about the leaders that are helping give us support and giving us direction. If you work under the right leader, that's 99% of it. And I think you can find alignment and purpose if you're supported by somebody like that. I just don't see a ton of it. But again, I've got a skewed perspective on the world.
I want to double tap on that, Bob. Is something, if I found like mentorship is how I feel like I stay connected to the work I'm doing. And before you mentioned curious as well, that's a kind of the two things. Like I'll find a mentor, I always stay curious. And I love what Mary said here. I'm going to pull it out again. Mary said, be mindful and practice. Right. Okay. Back to that questions. Yes, it's hard to get out of that. Like it's just like catch-all. Sometimes feel like catch-all position where it needs to be done. Yeah, but we're here for a reason. I think we all love CS for a reason because we are in love. Like we are naturally helpful, I guess. Intentional, wants to help people succeed and see that outcome. And just don't forget about yourself.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think that I do think that there are people who I've come across in my life who love the work that they do, and they are happy in their job. Whether it's customer success or accounting or anything, and I admire those people so much who just love and enjoy what they do. And often I find those people also have fulfillment in other areas of their lives. And so I think that people who I admire who are like that just seem to have a really good sense of what balance means to them. They've got a good sense for what their purpose is, and maybe they don't tie that sense of identity so tightly, specifically, or just to their work. It's extended into other places. And so I do think that what gets lionized in a big way is that, to be happy or to be fulfilled or to be off autopilot, you need to be like an entrepreneur and hustling and all those sorts of things. And I don't think that's certainly not my opinion of what it means. I think it's about being intentional and saying, no, like this is a job I love. This is a thing I enjoy doing. These are the reasons why, and I want to keep doing it. I want to get really damn good at it. And again, it's a privilege to have that opportunity to reflect and ask yourself that question. But I do love what you said, Bob, of the notion that leadership is such a big factor in what drives satisfaction for people. I think people do need to have a sense of feeling safe in order to be okay with the job that they have or what they're doing. I did notice, and I think Bob and Emma, you're probably better equipped to answer this question presently than I am, just given where my focus is these days. But the sense of why is CS changing? Mary, I just asked that question in the chat. That might be a big question to unpack, but I'm curious. Yeah, on behalf of Mary, why is CS changing?
It is a big question. That could be a conversation and a LinkedIn live event of its own. In short, why it's changing is just changes in the funding climate. So funding dried up. Expectations of SaaS companies in particular have the investors kind of want their money back, and they're not investing in as many new companies. And it's really putting customer success as a profession under a microscope to justify its ROI in a way that sales and marketing and product, arguably have always had to do. And it's not something that CS has particularly always done a really good job at articulating and measuring the impact. So it means that if you're a customer success manager, you got into it because you love working with clients and building long-term relationships, and now you're being asked to do more upsell and be more commercially accountable in terms of bringing in revenue. And for most people in CS, if they wanted that, they would have gone into sales. So they're being asked to do things that they really are not interested in doing. And I don't think those things are as far apart as a lot of people think. It's just that they just haven't been exposed to it, and that transition is bumpy for a lot of people.
Well said, Bob.
Yeah, that was like LinkedIn Live in a nutshell. Yeah. Would love to unpack, should customer success own revenue numbers and account? Like, oh my God, sign me up for that conversation. I see a former colleague and friend of mine, John, here in the chat. John, we talked about this all the time, and I've got strong opinions on that. So sign me up for that conversation too.
Well, we're coming to the end. Now, at the beginning of the chat, I asked you to introduce yourself. If you have a headline for yourself right now, like your current stage, what would that new headline be?
I'll go first. A headline. How about no dress rehearsal? This is our life.
Damn it. No, yeah.
I really wanted to go first. I didn't think there was a chance that you were going to steal it, but there's a small chance that we were sort of thinking somewhere along the same lines. Yeah. That's all. It's a line from one of our favorite bands that Greg and I love. So
I was actually hoping if we can squeeze it in the last 2 minutes here, we can have a quick riff on this, on them specifically. I mean, you let us know when we get kicked off here. Headline for me would be, it's my mission in life to help people live and work intentionally, which means off autopilot and just making the best of this one goddamn life that they have. That would be my headline. That is just my mission and purpose. Can I go after Bob on this other thing though? Okay, real quick. I have this thought, and Bob, we're fans of the Tragically Hip, and we hope everybody listening to this is also a fan of the Tragically Hip. I had this sense that the best Tragically Hip album, and this translates to other bands, is the one that they spent their whole lives building, which is the first album, right? That idea of having a purpose and a mission, I think is interesting, because my mission is to always make great music. But what if you've already created your best album, which we would argue was not the first album from the Hip? We would argue that it just got richer as it went along. But commercially, a lot of people really connected to those first couple of albums. So let's say your purpose is to make great music, but what if you've already done your best work? So question to you, but also related to the Tragically Hip.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I do think about this. There's different lines in music, right? I referenced Tom Petty and, any one of our favorite bands, and everybody has those lines that just seems like, there's a line by Pearl Jam on Eddie Vedder. It's like, I wish I was the full moon shining off a Camaro's hood. And I'm always like, did Eddie Vedder, when he wrote that, just drop the pen and be like, I'm out. I'm never writing anything that as good as that. Like, that's it. But you know what? He's written 100 lines as good, if not better, than since then. So there's something really beautiful about that idea and that question. I think there's always more.
There's always got to be more. I think that I love that answer, because in my mind, the song Scared by the Tragically Hip was one of the most impactful songs to me growing up, just because of when it played and how it played in my life. But then it took on a whole other meaning when you're standing in the crowd in their final tour and he sings out, "It's been a pleasure doing business with you."
Yeah, sobbing, and 20,000 people sobbing.
Yeah, that is so. The lines and work can take on different meanings at different phases of life. Bob, it's been a pleasure. Emma, thank you for having us in this session, and we hope it's been helpful.
Oh my God, it's been so amazing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to pull out, if you don't know where to find Bob, he's on LinkedIn. He also have a podcast. I put it in the chat, and also we'll share it again. And if you want to learn more about Vienna Waits, connect to Greg on LinkedIn here as well.
Awesome. Emma, thanks for the opportunity.
Amazing.
Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure doing business with you.
Yeah. Oh man, so good.
All right. Have a great afternoon.